Gotti stats. Good God, that's Gotti. Welcome to Gotti Stats
with Ben Simmons.
What's on the menu, Benny boy?
Listen, okay? Don't turn away. Look me in the eye. I want to tell you I'm sorry, okay? And I pledge to you now, at this very moment, as I sit in this 100-degree, attic-y second floor of the dwelling that I dwell in and sweat my ass off, I want to pledge to you now, as a single drop of sweat slowly trickles down my cheek and into my mouth as I'm talking to you, and I taste the salty sweatiness of my own body. I want to pledge to you that I will do one podcast per week from this point forth. I bit off more than I could chew, folks. I tried to do 2-3 podcasts a week. I can't do it. I'm a freelancer, guys. I have projects I got to work on. And listen, I'm not saving lives. I'm not a doctor. I'm not doing anything important, but to pay those bills, I got to work. And let's just say I didn't have a lot of time. I wanted to make time, but I couldn't. I'm back, but I'm pledging you now. One podcast a week is my goal, and I will do what I can to achieve that. But in the meantime, today, I'm presenting to you a conversation I had with my dear friend Sam about fantasy football, because the season is starting up. Things are getting hot outside and inside. My boxers, it's getting hot and sweaty and musky and musty and moldy, folks. I hope you're ready. I am not. I'm getting there. I'm researching, looking up stats, rookies, quarterbacks. We're going to talk about it. We'll talk about it a little bit. But thank you now for listening. And as I said, expect more podcasts, not as frequently as I promised. See, you should never overpromise. I should know that by now. You can't overpromise. But that's all in the past. Let's look forward to the future. Going to be some more fantasy football pods. I actually recorded a really long pod with Sam, so we're going to cut it into pieces. The second half is more NBA-centered, more NBA-centric. We're going to release that later. But for right now, a little fantasy football talk. We're going to do this with my absolute favorite. No, not absolute, but one of my top 5. A wet burrito. Let's do carnitas in there with some rice, beans, some brown beans. I like a brown with some chili verde, sauce, salsa, and sauce. And extra sauce on the side, and put the sauce on top. Sour cream, tons of avocado. I want guacamole, and then avocado chopped up, thrown on top. Put the cheese on top. Pour salsa all over everything. I want to be swimming in sauce. Sauce. Also, another thing to note about this podcast. And I'm a little delirious right now because I'm sweating my fucking ass off, okay? Try not to curse as much, but I'm sweating so bad right now. It's disgusting. I think I'm dripping on the computer. Okay, I'll stop. Nobody wants to hear about your sweating, but that's just who I am. You're going to have to deal with that, okay? But anyways, Sam, we're having some audio issues again with this program I use to record the people I call. Sam sounds like he's stuck in a jar. Sam, I apologize for that. We're going to fix these audio issues eventually, but I'm going to try to roll out some more pods, try to involve my friend Kemp, Dan, try to get him back on, try to call some other people, talk about some other things. One a week, guys. One a week. Thank you for listening. Let's start it up.
I'm on the second floor of our place, and it's extremely hot. It's,
Oh, really?
95 degrees is going to be the high today.
Yeah.
It's really humid, so I'm
I can empathize.
I may or may not be shirtless, and I'm just pacing around the room like some crazed army commander, just pacing around in the heat.
Now, do you have headphones on?
Yes, I do. I have some headphones on. Yeah.
Just pacing around shirtless and headphones.
Just using my hands a lot.
I think it's only a matter of time before an offensive coordinator does that in the booth. Just takes off his shirt.
Well, I mean, I maybe I'll put on like a muscle tee or something if I can find one around here.
Yeah.
Might make it a little bit more presentable. But what can I say? I mean, when I talk fantasy, I sweat almost immediately from the moment I, begin talking about it. So I've already started to sweat. And I sent you a message, and I'm getting really kind of unhealthily excited about Jerick McKinnon. And I know he's going to break my heart. I know I'm going to end up spending too much for him in our auction draft. And I'm going to be really excited if I do get a hold of him. But see, here's the thing, though. We have multiple Niners fans in our league.
We do.
And they're going to be going after him. I know that Mike's going to go after him. I know that Geezy's going to go after him. So it's going to be a feeding frenzy. It's going to be we're just going to be one-upping each other. It's going to go up to like $50 for Jerick McKinnon. And then I think Matt Breida is going to probably end up finishing with better stats than Jerick McKinnon because he's going to get hurt like week 5, and he's a slight man. He's strong, but I feel like he's been injured so much. Maybe it's been a little bit, I don't know. Maybe I'm exaggerating how much he's been injured. Maybe he might not be that injury prone, but what are your thoughts on Jerick McKinnon? Am I wrong to be over the moon about this little water bug? I guess you could say he's a stout water bug, but he's still a water bug.
Yeah. Well, 2 points on McKinnon. I think number one, what you're saying there in terms of coveting McKinnon as a player on a podcast where we are talking about fantasy football, I think that just shows a different mindset in an auction draft format than what we used to do. Because I think that in the past it was maybe a little more frowned upon, or anyone would be a little more reluctant for fear of tipping their hand. But with the auction format, you can get anybody that you want.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really want to spend the money, whereas, especially at the top of the draft, I think anyone who's in a snake draft, like, you don't necessarily want to say, if you have the 4th pick, this is who I like, to a rival, because that could maybe tip your hand and there's some kind of chain reaction. And, if they know what your strategy is, then that could put you at a disadvantage potentially. So I think that is one of the sort of obvious positives of this format, is that you can just say openly, I really like Jerick McKinnon, and I might go for him. The second part of it, which is again sort of only somewhat related to McKinnon, is I was sort of surprised by the 49ers offseason because I thought that they were going to be a little more aggressive in trying to build up that offense and give Jimmy Garoppolo more weapons.
Like a receiver. I was surprised that. Yeah.
I thought that either they would go. I mean, if they didn't want to pay Jarvis Landry or Allen Robinson that kind of money, then that's one thing. But I thought that they would get somebody. And I think the combination of not really getting a receiver and letting Carlos Hyde – well, was Carlos Hyde a free agent? I guess he was a free agent.
Yeah. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the Carlos Hyde thing.
Right.
Personally.
But the combination of not getting the receiver and not re-signing Hyde and only drafting McKinnon, that I found that surprising, because I thought that as promising as Garoppolo looked in the last month or 6 weeks of last season,
Mm-hmm.
that they would really want to be like full go, and if they had the cap space to do so,
Yeah.
that they would try and add another weapon or two.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Garoppolo, it's another guy I'm kind of over the moon for, but I'm a little hesitant. I feel like he's going to go for just what I've been seeing, what I've been reading about, kind of the average price and draft position on snake drafts and everything. He's been going for a lot of money and also pretty high in those kind of drafts. And
Yeah.
he did finish the year. I think he was on pace. If he had played, all 16 games, his pace was for 4,900 yards passing, which is outrageously high. I mean, actually, it's not this day and age. It's high, but it's not like, Drew.
It's not what it once was.
Yeah, exactly. But that's still really nice. And he wasn't getting a lot of scores, which was kind of, mitigating his fantasy impact. He was still having decent fantasy lines, but he
Right.
wasn't like, dominating by any stretch of the imagination. But I totally agree. Like, if they had just gotten, I think Allen Robinson would have been a really nice. They can give him like kind of like a show me contract, like paid him a lot for 1 year, kind of like what's going on in the NBA right now. Just pay him if that would have been possible. I don't know if it would have.
Yeah.
But just an athletic, dominant,
I think it would have
wide
been
receiver.
possible, but right. Well, and I think it would have been possible, but the moment that Allen Robinson got such a sizable contract from another team, there was just no chance. I mean, he was going to take that guaranteed money, especially coming off of
Yeah.
the season where he got injured. I think he literally tore. Did he? I think he tore his AC. It was definitely his first target, but it might have been the first play from scrimmage, because that game was here in Houston, and he jumped up and like he fell. He immediately grabbed his leg. It didn't really look like.
I can't watch those.
Play.
I can't watch those kind of plays. It really makes me.
And he was done.
Mm.
And so I don't blame someone, even though he's still pretty young. I don't blame someone for wanting to get their money and to get paid.
I blame him. I blame him, actually. I blame him.
Yeah. That's fair. We're open to all viewpoints on this podcast. Like,
I'm extremely biased, though. I'm extremely biased, and you know what? Maybe there's the whole
love of the game.
There's the whole saying, like, some of the best deals you make are ones you don't make, something like that. I think I butchered that, but like sometimes it's like, maybe we would have paid too much for him. Maybe, just because I'm saying we, the 49ers, just because we're flush with all this cap space.
No, go. Lean into it. Go with it.
I can't help myself. I have to. But, he went to the Bears. So, he's going to – that's where receivers, as Mushin Muhammad famously said, that's where receivers go to die. So he's going to the Bears. He's going to the cold winds coming off the Lake Michigan there. He's going to disappear. He's going to probably the cold's going to freeze his ankles, his joints, and his ligaments. They're going to tear very easily out there again. And I don't.
Do you think Allen Robinson's ever going to go to Guthrie's?
Oh God, what a great bar! It's a bar where you can play one of those great.
What's the answer? Yeah.
I mean, I don't think so. Maybe. I mean, it's kind of close to Wrigley Field, so he might be in Wrigleyville one night partying and say, I just want to play Stratego, and so then he goes down to Guthrie and he plays Stratego and has a beer. It's always possible, but it brings back memories. I've seen you playing some. Did we play any games when we were there, or we just had a few pints? Can't remember.
Had some oat sodas, but can't remember playing
Stratego
or Sorry or Trouble. But I liked the vibe. I don't know if it's a professional athlete kind of vibe.
Yeah, and maybe not. There's not, there's not a lot of glamour, bright lights.
What I'm saying is that it's too cool for a professional athlete. I don't think it's really.
Nice spin.
A professional athlete
I like that spin.
Would want to set foot in there. No, but to get back to McKinnon, Ben.
Yes. Jerick.
I don't know, man.
He's going to catch a lot of balls if he can stay healthy.
Yeah, no, I think he will. But Cook, tore his ACL like in the fifth or sixth game last year. He had such a promising start, and that backfield.
You had
Minnesota,
him. You had him.
I had Cook, yeah, and then I had all this fab budget, the waiver money to spend, and I had to basically choose between Murray or McKinnon. I chose Murray. Our friend Chris ended up with Jerick McKinnon, and the rest of the season was sort of a battle to see who was going to kind of pick up the pieces more. I think it kind of went back and forth, and there was no real consistent winner in that regard. I mean, I don't think that Latavius Murray is not like a super talented running back, but Jerick McKinnon is kind of small, and he does catch, but he fumbles a lot, like you mentioned. He's injury prone. I think in that offense where like he's got this new quarterback and he's got Kyle Shanahan, who, as we've seen, his offenses have really been able to kind of distribute the ball well to running backs and take advantage of water bugs, as a phrase that we like to use on this podcast, pretty well. Yeah. And I think he fits all of that kind of sensibly. But when I've looked at some rankings this summer so far, Ben, I don't know, man. It seems like he's being drafted a little high for my taste.
Yeah.
Like he's up in that top 12 or 15 running backs, and like if you're going to draft him there, you're going to have to get the full realization of what you're imagining he could become for it to be worth it.
Yeah, and on top of that, and just really quick, a little sidebar, like that something that kind of annoys me about fantasy sometimes is the draft after the draft. Like the draft happens, and then like the first week of waivers, or like the third or fourth, when players start getting hurt, and you can basically win a season during those weeks if you pick correctly, if you pick the right guys who are replacing injured guys and all that. Kind of frustrating, but I digress there. I digress.
But I will say, can I just push back a little?
Yes.
It's better than what we have a better system now by having that fab budget than we did in the past, where it was just a merry-go-round.
Indeed.
A carousel with waiver priorities. So
no, I'm just complaining just to complain because it's fun.
Well, no, I mean, I think it can be kind of weird and frustrating. I'm with you there, but I think we're like, to give us a little credit, I think we've managed to make it so that each manager has pretty much maximum control of how they construct their team between the draft and waivers. And I don't think it's the kind of thing where our league or any league specifically was like, well, we should have been doing this in 2005. Well, it just wasn't as big in 2005, and people were also still learning how to play fantasy football. And I think sometimes you have to be in a league for a couple of years, or maybe even 8 or 10 years, to really get a feel of the rules and the system and what kind of players you covet and what kind of players to kind of fade. What sorts of what your kind of strategies, what sorts of strategies your league mates have, how you might tailor your strategy accordingly. These are things that take time, and I think kind of in line with that, the rules evolve over time. So I think that the way that our league has changed, I think it's been kind of deliberate in some ways, but I do think if we'd had some of these sort of specific systems with auction and controlling about waivers 4 or 5 years earlier, it might have been a little too quickly in terms of people still getting a feel for how to just what kind of way they like to play in general.
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe you disagree with that.
Well, you're right. You make a good point. Too much too soon, perhaps, if we had started. And you're right. A lot of that stuff has evolved, and it's just kind of frustrating that I don't know. As we get older, it can be sometimes be harder to be such a hawk on the waiver wire as perhaps we have been in years past. But I will say I do like our system a lot. I think it's much more fair. I can't remember how is that structured. Fairer, more fair.
I think that it's fairer is the
fairer, fairer. than it used to be. But yeah, I mean, and like just back to McKinnon though,
Yes.
I've been reading, I've been getting dispatches from Geezy and other 49ers fans about the developments and the red and gold camp. It just opened recently, and
Yep.
as the previously mentioned, Matt Breida has been tearing it up, and he's been one of the stars of camp. And it just adds another a little bit of doubt to McKinnon. Like, could there be like more of an even timeshare? Could it be 60-40? I mean, some people are saying McKinnon's in line for, if healthy, a 1,500-yard season receiving and rushing combined, and that seems like a lot. But I guess when you add the receptions in, that would be nice too. Um, but I don't know if he can get there with Breda another year. And Breda, if you look at Breda's, now we're getting deep into 49ers talk here, so we'll veer away from this soon. But if you look at Breda's game log from last year, towards the end of the year, he got more play, and he was stellar. He averaged over 6 yards a carry the last 2 weeks of last year,
Yep.
and he was just whipping off big chunk play. He looks great. He looked great. I was getting excited. I was getting, I was like, who needs Carlos Hyde? Who needs a big free agent? We got Breda. So I'm just a little hesitant as well with McKinnon, but I also remember those games from last year with all the receptions and his,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? I'm conflicted,
He had
Sam.
some really good games, and he had some clunkers, and it was sort of good luck figuring out which one, when he would do, which game would be which. So I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it, I think this year the idea is, well, the idea behind people who are so bullish on him is that, well, there's not going to be a Latavius Murray to be in his way. But as you're rightfully saying, I think it sounds to me like Matt Breida could very well be kind of in that potential category. I'm looking now, just to kind of give some comps in terms of the way that they play and the way that offenses could use them.
Yeah, yeah. And while I'm looking, I'm also looking at. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I have a question for you. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Let's exclude return yards. Okay, so I'll just say rushing and receiving. How many rushing and receiving yards total combined do you think Christian McCaffrey had last year? I'm putting you on the spot here, so I don't expect you to speak.
I owned him too, so
that's, you had him. That's
yeah.
Right.
But I don't remember his total. I think it was like just a shade over 1,000.
Yeah, so that's you're very close. You're on the nose there, really. It's let me see. I'm doing my math here.
And he started to heat up at the end of the year too. He started to heat up a little bit.
He had 1,086. Yeah, and he had a much better second half. He had 1,086 total yards, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that I don't think he. I mean, you would have a better sense than I would, because you had him and followed him more closely week to week. I mean, I wouldn't say he had a disappointing year, but maybe for where you drafted him, he was a little disappointing. I don't know.
Well, I think you said it perfectly when we were talking about Christian McCaffrey on a previous podcast. You said, or maybe it was sometime when we were hanging out and swilling some oat soda. I can't really remember, but you said that, because I got him for $30, and you were like, well, that's like about where his value is, and I think that's probably true. I think maybe I wanted a little bit more at $30. He maybe was like 25 or 23, but you're right. I mean, he was the king of just tiny little gains on these quick little receptions. He was that was his bread and butter basically for much of the year.
Right.
And when they got rid of Kelvin Benjamin, this lumbering ogre who basically lost me many weeks in fantasy because with his just slow pace and his dinner plate hands, and I really cannot stand even looking at pictures of him now, because I'll never own him ever again. I've been down this road with Kelvin too many times, and just broke my heart every single time. I also own.
Well,
I had like 3 Panthers on my team too, so that was a mistake.
Just
That was
stacking Panthers. I like it.
Yeah, it's really stupid.
The Panthers stack. The good news is you don't ever have to hear from him again because he's been relegated to Buffalo. Where
ostracized.
You will never hear from them. When the combination of Josh Allen and Bass Pro Shop in human form, A.J. McCarron will be under center for the Bills next year, which should be fun.
Yeah,
hey, it's good that they got rid of Tyrod Taylor so that they could go with a Josh Allen, A.J. McCarron tandem. Good luck with that, Bill.
Makes no sense. Makes no sense at all. But yeah, I'm glad he's been banished. But still, I mean, I don't know. But I guess my point was that Christian McCaffrey, like he's exactly what you said. He's like solid, but not spectacular most weeks. But he was good for like 10 points in our system most weeks, which is pretty good.
So do you think that he had just under 1,100 yards total receiving and rushing?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that, and I think we would agree he had a pretty good, like maybe he didn't have a great year, but he had a pretty good year. And he really picked it up, like you're saying, at the end of the year. And he had a couple plays. I mean, he had that one touchdown in the playoff game against the Saints. But I thought he had that acceleration that it was like, wow. I mean, I just remember watching that game and watching the way they used him, and maybe part of it was the Saints defense. But just sort of wondering why didn't the Panthers try to use him like this a little bit sooner in the season?
Well, yeah. Well, I got a little. I have to start to interrupt you, but I just remembered my initial point with the whole Kelvin Benjamin thing, and that ties into what you're saying, what you're asking. When he left, the offense just opened up, and McCaffrey became, with his like yards per carry, seemed like it went up. Now I'm looking at his stats right now, and that's absolutely false. Actually, no, it's correct. His yards per carry started going up. I was looking at the chronology wrong. I was looking from like most recent to farthest away. But let's see.
Yeah.
His yards per carry started to go up once he got traded. So the whole idea was that when this lumbering oaf leaves, when he exits, when this galoot is shipped away, then it's going to just create all this space for all the other skill players like Christian McCaffrey. And I think that was true to a certain degree, but I totally agree with you. They didn't use him correctly. Cam Newton probably isn't the greatest quarterback for him because he's just Cam is fantastic. He's a wonderful quarterback and he's extremely talented, but his like precision passing, I feel like never has been his strong suit. And watching Christian McCaffrey, as the fanboy I was last year, just begging for yardage, getting excited whenever he caught the ball, sweating profusely whenever his name was mentioned in the broadcast. I noticed that Cam Newton just overshot him a lot, and part of it's because he's a diminutive, kind of a smaller guy. And that was why maybe he wasn't used to throwing as many balls to the running back, and things could be totally different this year. He might be much more locked in to McCaffrey. I hope so.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. I don't know.
He was 15th in the scoring system last year with that just under 1,100 total yards. So he was still an RB2.
Yeah.
You know,
that's true.
This idea of like, so I'm looking, for example,
80 receptions, which is
I'm thinking
crazy.
about the ideal season for McKinnon, and I guess you could consider what Alvin Kamara's season was. And he had 1,500. He had 1,554 total yards, and obviously he also had pretty high touchdown numbers. 13
touchdowns plus one return.
So, but he was the RB. He was the 4th ranked running back. So basically, to get back to what you're saying, like if you think that McKinnon's going to have a 1,500 total, not you, but if someone thinks that McKinnon can have 1,500 all-purpose yards, I mean, he should be. I mean, I recognize that the raw point totals for RB1, RB10, RB20.
Mm-hmm.
Those fluctuate pretty significantly, maybe from year to year.
Yeah.
Just like with receivers, for example, last year was, I would say, across the board, a pretty terrible year for wide receivers in fantasy.
Yeah,
you just didn't have a whole lot of major production. But I think you could safely say if McKinnon was expected to have that total, maybe near Kamara's or even near McCaffrey's last year, you could put him inside the top 10. But I mean, I think we're kind of saying, we're kind of agreeing that, like, that's not a sure thing, and only having that kind of season with a workload that he is not necessarily used to or not necessarily built for, only then would he be worth where he was getting drafted.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, people are saying... Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I think it's cool that you were talking about those 49ers dispatches, and you didn't mention what that is, which with the 49ers, the way they do dispatches now is, and of course this is in line with the league's renewed commitment to patriotism and the troops. They love the troops. What they do is they have Steve Mariucci, former 49ers coach, release these 10 California condors, and they're endangered, but they're draped in the American flag, and they're basically messenger pigeons. But they're
like
they're
ravens.
Birds. Yeah, they're like pigeons. And they send messages to special members of an exclusive 49ers fan club. So you're kind of selling yourself short there. You didn't mention that you got a messenger condor who flew up from the Bay Area to Portland to give you a scoop. He gives you scoops. Your condor gives you scoops on McKinnon and Marquise Goodwin and which adult film actress Jimmy Garoppolo took to dinner, etc.
Yeah, I feel kind of bad though. The latest condor that came in, I was really hungry, and he was looking a little plump, so I trapped him in a cage, and he became my dinner for that night, Sam.
Well, that's a shame, but listen, that's not your fault. You were only taking what came to you. Did he make it to Oregon with the American flag? That's the most. I don't think whether he gets eaten or whether he's in danger. The most important thing is, did the flag stay on his talons?
Yes, it did.
Okay, well,
and now it hangs proudly in my bathroom, right by the toilet.
For the purposes of the NFL and their owners, that's the most important. That condor would have been disrespecting the troops if he lost the flag, and to that extent, he'd actually, I would say, maybe even deserved to be eaten.
Yes. California condor. I think they might even be endangered. I didn't care. Did not care one bit.
That's what they used to call Brent Jones.
Oh, Brent Jones. You want to talk about a hard-nosed tight end? A guy who has brought us lunch pail to each game. First in, first out.
For sure. He was a lunch pail Mabel, I think, would be the
exactly.
expression. He puts on his hard hat. And I wasn't even referring to him as a condor. I just meant like in the Bay Area nightlife on the night scene. I mean, on the field, he was also good. But I think he was, in the 80s were a weird time, Ben. I don't know if you know.
Yeah, well, I certainly like the music from that time. A little new wave. Gets me going. I usually play it right before kickoff. Like a little, I don't know, OMD, If You Leave, I Won't Cry.
Okay, yeah.
A little bit of that, a little Alphaville. Just
maybe some New Order.
I love New Order. Oh God. Here's a little exercise. If you like 80s music, anybody listening, and you too, Sam, check out some of these one-hit wonders. Find the band name, type it into Google, find a full album, download it, and give it a little listen. You'll be surprised. There's some gems out there, some great 80s music that has been overlooked. A lot of synth, a lot of synthesizers, a lot of electronic drums. Just, it's music from the future and the past. That's the way I look at it. It is the music of the future today and of yesteryear. So, what can I say? I'm a huge fan of the 80s music. Anyways,
I love the synth. I love the I love the wardrobes. I love the blazers with the shoulder pads where you look like you're wearing a fucking coffin while you play the keyboard. I mean,
You look like they look like they're dead too. The way they do their makeup, like the white
the whole
makeup.
aesthetic. Yeah.
Yeah.
We really have
Zombies.
to credit. We have to really credit, as we do with many things in the latter half of the 20th century with pop music.
Bowie.
I think we have to credit the Brits for that.
Oh, you're gonna go. I was gonna say David Bowie, but I think you're right.
Well, yeah. Well, he's British. He counts. Sure.
Yeah, no, he's one of the
David
Brits.
Bowie specifically. I mean, I think between Joy Division and New Order and
oh god,
I mean, The Cure and the Smiths aren't really new wave as much, but that whole just sort of
a lot of mope rock,
looking sort of gaunt and maybe like you haven't eaten or
like you're about to die, like you're about to die in a moment. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Oh man,
there's credit for bringing that to us.
The Cure.
Yeah.
Just that's another like hype up track. I think I'm gonna play that Destruction album right before our draft. Get real sad and just depressed. I think it's gonna. I think it might help me with my mindset during the draft. Just being like, no, to hell with Jerick McKinnon. What's the point? He's gonna get hurt. You know, it might actually make me make better decisions because I won't be as like overly excited. Cause I'm very excitable sometimes with some of these players, and I just get locked in, and I can't look away. But in terms of McKinnon, again, we'll get off him soon, I promise. But people are saying he's going to have the same output as Devonta Freeman because, you know, the Niners coach has mentioned he was obviously in Atlanta, offensive coordinator, and there's been some info floating around that maybe he might assume that role, and that has a lot of people kind of licking their lips. That's kind of a gross visual, but it has people excited because Devonta Freeman has seen some amazing stats in his career, in his relatively short career, playing under that system. So we'll see, man. It really is all about health, I feel like. And if he can hold off Breda from cutting into his workload a little bit, because Breda actually has a little bit of an advantage being in the system 1 year over him. So I don't know, man. I don't know.
An idea just popped into my, as we're wrapping up McKinnon. An idea just popped into my head where maybe, in line with the music thing you said, at some point we need to have a segment where we are reading the entire or a portion of the off-season rules email in Morrissey's sing-songy voice.
I can't even do his voice. Like, I was trying to do an impression of him the other night. I can't remember how it got brought up. I was with some friends and I was trying to do an impression of Morrissey. I just can't do it. I don't know what it is about the tone of his voice is so unique.
It's very unique.
Yes. I just realized I said so unique, and that's like unique's an absolute, so I don't even know why I said that.
That's true.
But anyways, I'm not a grammar major. That's such a thing. But yeah, his register is just in a weird place. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like kind of low, but then he goes high.
Yeah. And like it's like sing talking almost, you know?
Yeah. And he wails. He just like goes. He just cries and he mopes, and he's on a different level.
He also would have been really fucking angry at you for eating that condor. He's not about
meat is murder. That's what he says.
I don't know if you know about that. I don't know if you know that sentence, but he's also got some really let's say bad takes, I would say.
Yeah.
The last few years, they're
well,
not great.
I don't agree with everything he says. I agree with.
We have to separate the artist from the art sometimes, right?
Oh God, you're telling me. Basically, with any artist, I mean, you can go look at their Wikipedia page and be horrified at some of the stuff you see. Same with athletes, you know, like Michael Vick was a lot of fun to watch play, but you read his. Needless to say, when you read his Wikipedia, there's a few things that pop out that are pretty horrific. But
correct.
Anyways.
So let me think. If I were gonna, I mean, I'm on the spot. Cut this out, okay? Cut this out if it doesn't work. Ready? So it's like, what? I can't even. Like, what would you?
The queen is dead. The queen is. I can't even do it. I can't do it.
I think we should eliminate kickers. I wouldn't do. No, it is kind of like operatic. But
I'm leaving that in, Sam.
I don't even care. We can throw kickers in. I don't care.
No, that's good. That's pretty good. Yeah. It is. You're right. It is kind of conversational. That's.
I don't like IDPs. Get rid of them.
Morrissey and fantasy football, they go hand in hand. We've known this for a long time.
We're the only. You produce and run and create the only podcast that overlaps.
Yes.
Morrissey and the NFL Network did once have as its theme song "Every Day Is Like Sunday" from his solo career, which was incredible because that song is about like this crippling depression in Margaret Thatcher's England and just the hopelessness of youth. And the NFL Network just put it on all these ads as the sort of dubbed soundtrack to like highlights in the mid 2000s of like fucking Javon Walker and Cadillac Williams scoring touchdowns. It's pretty good.
Oh my God! It's a beautiful thing. And as you were talking, I was queuing up "How Soon Is Now."
Yeah.
That with that crazy guitar lick, the Smiths. "How Soon Is Now."
Well, they have Johnny Marr he's got some amazing.
Did he no, he didn't make his own guitar. I was thinking of the guitarist from Queen. I think made his own guitar.
Brian
But like,
May? Yeah.
but like the sounds that come out of some like he's. You're right. He's such an the Smiths guitar is such an underrated guitarist.
Mm-hmm.
But this song, the vocals on it, it really gives me chills. Like the way this song is constructed. He's like, I can't do an impression. I'm like kind of halfway listening. All right, we got it. We got. How can you say you go about things the wrong way? I am human and I need to be loved. Yeah, it's kind of.
There you go.
That's the best I can do.
Oh, that was good.
I have my windows open. I have my neighbors can hear me right now, and it's a little embarrassing. But this isn't the only weird thing they've heard.
I am the sun. I am the earth. Of a shining that is criminally vulgar.
He probably actually believes those lyrics about himself. I hate to say it.
Yeah, it's good, and we have. I'm sure he would. Because he's he's known to be a very friendly and affable man. He would love our renditions, and I'm sure he likes when people do karaoke of his songs.
Oh yeah, he's not curmudgeonly at all. He's not grumpy at all.
Of This Charming Man, which is Punctured Bicycle on a Hillside Desolate.
Yeah.
My favorite opening lyric to a song ever.
Yeah. What's that other song where he's like? He's like basically singing about dying next.
I love when you're about to try to remember the song.
He's like, what a pleasure it would be to. He's like, what a pleasure it would be to die next to you, or something like. I don't know what it is. I can't remember the exact lyrics, but the pleasure and the privilege is mine.
Yeah, that's There Is a Light.
There is a light that will never.
Double-decker bus.
Just a man to us, to die by your side. Well, the president of.
Oh, cool! There's fantasy content. I'm ready for football. And they forward to minutes 30 on their drive, and it's just two men in their mid-30s just having an impromptu karaoke session on a Monday.
Well, I mean, how could you not with Morrissey and Smith?
I would do it again.
It's done. It's going to go in. It will not be cut out. It needs to be preserved because the Smiths are that important. But I do want to ask you. We don't have a ton of time, but I want to touch on another player that Morrissey probably loves.
Yes.
Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Sam, did you know that in our system's like basically half point PPR with a few little things thrown in there.
Our fantasy system, not like our American, like not our.
Yeah, no, this isn't the American imperialist system. This is just a little fantasy league. You can draw some parallels to governments and dictatorships, tyrants, things like that. But
Yeah.
it's mainly democratic. It's a social democracy. We'll just say that.
Right.
It's a collectivist system. No, I don't know what I'm talking about at this point. But Russell Wilson, Sam, led our league in fantasy points.
In raw
fantasy points. Now, of course, we know that
a quarterbacks
always, but the second highest total belonged to Todd Gurley. So Russell Wilson had 451 fantasy points. Todd Gurley had 407. So Russell Wilson had 51 more fantasy points than the next QB, which was Cam Newton. It was kind of a down year for QBs too. The highest Russell Wilson had the most touchdowns at 34. I feel like that's like, I remember back in the days of, not to get into 49ers players again, but it is my podcast. Jeff Garcia. That's like, he would always put up like 3,800 yards, like, 36 touchdowns, and Russell Wilson obviously had more yards. Well, not really. He had 3,983 yards. That's kind of low.
Yeah.
It was a weird year. There were some higher yardage totals, like Philly Rivers had 4,500 yards, but Russell Wilson had a lot of rushing yards, 586 and 3 touchdowns. I don't know. Like, have you thought about the QBs for this year? Is there anybody in particular that you? I know we're going to be drafting together. You may not want to get the secret out. You may have somebody.
Why are you trying to get intel on me, Simmons?
You hear that sound? I'm writing down everything. I'm taking notes at everything you say. Taking notes, scribbling notes frantically, everything you say. So choose your next words wisely, my friend.
Why don't you take that up with my lawyer? Actually, do you have a lawyer in the league?
Yeah, Micah.
Micah, yeah. Micah is my. Hold on. What is his? He won the year. He won the playoffs that year as Dr. Harold Bornstein. What was he last year? He was
something
anti-fap. Okay. Well, no. Let's. I think Dr.
something
Harold
weird.
Bornstein is one of the best names in the history of our league. So I'll just leave it at that. Why don't you take that up with my lawyer, Dr. Harold Bornstein?
Yeah. And the funny thing is that Harold Bornstein was that's okay. I just got it. I'm sorry. I'm a little slow, but he's a doctor and he's a lawyer. There probably are actually people out there who are doctors and lawyers.
Both, I don't really know if he's either of those things. Just why he was in the news. But
it's a good point. It's a good point.
So I haven't really, and I'm tipping my hand here a little bit, but when I start to do research and try to come up with a draft strategy, quarterbacks are not the first thing that I look at.
Yeah.
I'm much more interested in the skill positions.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it is a really interesting year for quarterbacks across the board. I don't think that last year was a particularly good year for quarterbacks, but there have been a lot of big names that have changed teams, and there's obviously a pretty large rookie class with the expectation that some of them are going to start sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Which is not answering your question, which is ducking your question about Russell Wilson. About Russell Wilson, I would say I think he's at this point, his range is he could be the best quarterback, but then there's other years where he's maybe fifth or I don't have it in front of me. Actually, you know what? Let me look this up real fast.
In terms of offensive philosophy,
yeah,
they've lost. So here's the thing. Here's why I think he could have a repeat performance.
Okay.
I'm not saying he's going to be the top QB, but their defense has been gutted. Now, I still think it's going to be pretty good, but they lost a lot of their staples. They kind of lost their heart and souls. Like Michael Bennett's gone. I think Earl Thomas is going to be traded or he's going to leave.
Uh-huh.
Richard Sherman is gone. Cam Chancellor, I think, retired, or one of those guys. Either Michael Bennett or Cam Chancellor retired or got traded or left. Or
Chancellor retired, Michael Bennett got traded, and Richard Sherman is gone, like you're saying.
Yeah, so it's like that's what is it called? The Legion of Boom. I hate the Seahawks. I'm a 49ers fan, so I hate them with a passion, and I want to see them crumble. I want to see them get they're supposed to have one of the I think they're supposed to have a pretty low win total this year, if I'm not mistaken, from Vegas. I think I saw that. But I think they're going to be behind more games than not, and I think Russell is going to be forced to sling the ball, run around as he does so well, and could be interesting. I'm curious to see where he goes in our draft. But
yeah. Well, they've got the rookie running back Rashad Penny. They signed Brandon Marshall. They still got Baldwin, obviously. I'm looking now. In 2016, he was ninth. He finished the season ninth. So I mean, I think he's reliably in the top 10. But I mean, his value to me is maybe if I had to rank them as a fantasy professional or whatever you would call it, I would probably put him somewhere between. I would probably say he's fourth or fifth. I would rank him for most years. I would just rank a player like Russell Wilson fourth or fifth. I think with the rushing yards, you're going to get there's a certain floor there.
Yeah,
the floor is a little higher maybe than for a lot of players because of the rushing yards, similar to Cam Newton. I do agree that they have the potential to get in some shootouts. I still don't really like their weapons, if I'm honest. I've never been a big Doug Baldwin guy. I don't really know if Brandon Marshall has much left. They lost Jimmy Graham. I'm not necessarily assuming that Jimmy Graham will be great.
What do you think? I was going to ask you about that. Not to take you off Russell for a bit, like I think he's going to be amazing in Green Bay. Jimmy Graham.
I mean, it just sort of depends on how much he has left, right? I mean,
I think he's got some stuff left.
He's had some injuries. If he can, obviously, the most recent experience bringing a big name who had put up some numbers and then maybe had a couple so-so years with the Packers for a tight end was Marcellus Bennett, which was a disaster.
Tell me about it. I drafted him.
Yeah, it was. I don't think
fucking nightmare.
Right. It's not going to go that poorly, but I don't know, man. I think it's Rodgers is going to give him all the opportunities he can in terms of targets and for him to succeed, but it's kind of going to be about how much Graham has left in the tank.
I think he's just going to get a lot of touchdowns. I think he's just going to be throwing up tons. I mean, because Rodgers is Rodgers. Rodgers is going to have an amazing year this year because his contract's coming to an end soon, and he wants
He's also just. I mean, I don't know if I would ever cite this when I'm like, oh well, I think so and so will have a good year, but I think there is some frustration about how last year went. I mean, he injures he breaks his collarbone and injures himself when they're 4-1 and they're coming off that game where he drives down the field to beat Dallas on the last drive of the game. And at that point, Ben, I know that they were a flawed team, and this is obviously I'm a bit of a homer, so I don't know. I can't say this for certain, but I mean I think they definitely with a healthy Rodgers the whole season, I think they definitely make the playoffs. They sure seemed like the best team in October when he got hurt. They sure seemed like the best team in the NFC to me.
They were so dangerous.
I don't know that it's hard to project that forward and be like, well, they would have made the Super Bowl. But, I think now I just I don't like Mike McCarthy. I don't think he's a good coach. I wish that they had gotten rid of him. There's been 2 or 3 separate off seasons where I think they would have been justified at this point. Firing him.
Really quick, is Dom Capers still employed by the Green Bay Packers?
I believe that last year was his last year.
I mean, that guy, what he's gotten away with.
He was from 2009 to 2017. The new defensive coordinator, for those who are so curious, and I know everyone is, the new defensive coordinator is.
He was. I remember when they played against the Colin Kaepernick led Niners many years ago. He gashed them for 200 yards rushing in the playoffs. And I thought to myself, well, that guy, I mean, he's not going to have a job. And then I think he was employed by that team for another 5 years after that.
He was. That's right. The Packers hired Mike I can't. Is it Petin? He was the former head coach of the Browns. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
He's Canadian. We like to work food in. Mike Poutine.
Oh man,
So,
I would
Mike
love a
Poutine,
big bowl of poutine right now.
Mike
And just
Poutine,
fall asleep on
in
the
your
floor.
95-degree residence.
Yeah, I'm starting to kind of lose my mind a little bit up here. It's hot. The temperature's going up. I can see it on the thermometer. It's starting to rise.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting real
Yeah.
hot. I'm starting to sweat. So we probably should call it quits pretty soon.
Well,
but not yet. Not yet.
One thing. No, well, and so I mean, Russell Wilson. I don't feel differently about him than I do any given year. I think at this point he's just established as a starting court. Someone will be starting him consistently in our league every year. Now, whether he's 2 or 1 or 8, I don't know. But I think he's in that group with I don't know. I mean, I'd have to think about Rodgers, Breeze, Brady, where it's like he's going to go for more than $20 probably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For what I'd have to pay to get him, I probably will not have him. But yeah, I mean, he's good. No, I think he'll be good, and I think maybe in some, as you referred to, the fact that he does have some that his team did suffer some losses on both sides of the ball, and is maybe a little worse than they have been in recent years. I mean, you don't want it to be too simplified, but like maybe that will help with when he's such an established player, and you know he's as consistent as he has been, being in the top 10 or 12 or the top 5. Maybe that will help him when his team isn't quite as good and he's having to constantly come back.
Yeah,
I mean, that happened for several years in the 2000s with the Arizona Cardinals. Speaking of that division, where they had this unusual setup both before and after Kurt Warner came, but especially before, where it seemed like they had Larry Fitzgerald and Anquan Bolden, but they also were very good, and so they would be down like 21-0 in the first quarter or in the second quarter sometimes, and you have to throw, and you happen to have Larry Fitzgerald and Anquan Bolden.
Yeah,
and that is a situation where you fantasy owners of those two guys reaped the rewards of the fact that the Cardinals were simultaneously a shitty team, but they also had good offensive skill players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I could see that happening.
It's true. It's true. I mean, also another thing to bring about Russell, I don't know why I'm like just suddenly obsessed with this guy, but it's going to be only his 7th season in the NFL. He seems like he's been around for a lot longer than that.
You're right.
And
man,
Sam, he set career highs last year for completions and attempts. But it wasn't his career high in yardage. It was his 3rd highest yardage. He got 4,200 the previous year in 2016. Right. But he had 34 touchdowns. But 2 years ago, he had a little over 4,000 yards passing and 34 touchdowns. And he had like a similar amount of rushing yards as this year, but less touchdowns rushing. So I don't know, man. It could be like I got to do a little more research on like what their offensive philosophy might be. The thing I think that might throw a wrench in everything could be their offensive coordinator. I'm trying to think. Don't they have a new offensive coordinator?
Darrell Bevel was their guy for so long.
He was annoying too. Oh, it's Brian Schottenheimer, that run-happy motherfucker. Sorry for the language.
No,
but yeah, it's old Marty Ball, just a new generation, like just pounding the rock. So, you know what? I might have to just turn the rewind button on everything I just said, and completely reverse course. But no, I'm joking. But that could throw a wrench in the whole thing. I mean, if he's going to be around, he's going to be trying to pound the rock all the time and control the game and do like a ball control style offense. Then
I actually do think that is good gamesmanship on your part, though.
Yeah.
Talk up a player for 10 or 12 or 15 minutes.
Or 20 or 30 minutes.
And then
it's been a
just
long
say,
time.
and then just say, actually, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it's all like, so somebody's gonna like be so bored with all my yammering and just turn it off and be like, he loves Russell Wilson, and then it's gonna be all for naught.
Okay, so I have one thing I want to get in, and then we can wrap up.
Yeah.
Unless you want to do some kind of rapid fire, like, and I feel like when I'm on, it's disproportionately we talk about this team for some reason, but from a fantasy football perspective, I think easily one of the most fascinating and probably the most fascinating team this year that I just like. I have no idea what's going to happen. The winner of that award this year is the Cleveland Browns. And like I said, we talk about the Browns a disproportionate amount. Normally it's because
Peyton Hillis.
That's a joke. Yeah. What's that?
Usually it's just when we talk about Peyton Hillis.
Right. Peyton Hillis. Maybe a little bit of, Peyton Hillis with like a side of Braylon Edwards thrown in there, and just like talking about their futility and like Charlie Fry and how they had like 7 straight games where they scored like either where they didn't score a touchdown or whatever it was in 2000. I don't know.
Sad.
But it wouldn't surprise me if it was. But this was an off-season, Ben, where they just like accumulated players, and they had these 2 high draft picks. They drafted this corner from Ohio State, Denzel Ward, and they drafted Baker Mayfield, who's just sort of going to be groomed as finally having a franchise quarterback for Cleveland, which they've said that literally 10 times in the last 20 years, and it has not worked.
Yeah, he's going to be groomed like a show dog. They're going to groom him. They're going to feed him.
Yes,
brush his hair.
Yes, like a prancing show dog in Northeast Ohio on the banks of beautiful Lake Erie.
Yep.
Tyrod Taylor is along for the ride to perhaps start and maybe groom. I keep using groom.
He's going to groom him. No, well, I'm just imagining him like just in a little pen and a bunch of like guys, all the guys you're mentioning, just like grooming him, like just brushing his hair and feeding him and doting on him.
Hugh Jackson is on the practice field, brushing his hair, reading his play sheet, which is upside down, and just brushing Baker Mayfield's hair. So it's Baker Mayfield and Tyrod Taylor. Then they drafted Nick Chubb out of Georgia.
What a name.
Nicholas Chubb, as those who know him well.
Jarvis Landry. I'm excited about him.
Landry. They got Carlos Hyde. They have Josh Gordon, maybe not. We'll see, coming back to play a full season. And right now, Ben, there are talks that they're reportedly interested in potentially bringing in Des Bryant. And that's on top of Duke Johnson, who had a sneaky good, especially.
Oh, I love Duke Johnson.
Who had a sneaky good season last year, and Corey Coleman, who, Corey Coleman is not going to be Jerry Rice, but I think.
Well, nobody is ever.
This is true, fair enough. But I think when Corey Coleman has been healthy, he's actually been pretty good. But he's just been so injury prone, and he's been he's been a victim of the Browns and the fact that he's on the Browns. But when you look at like Landry, Gordon, Coleman, possibly Dez, and then you have this backfield monster of Duke Johnson, Hyde, Chubb, and then you have Baker Mayfield and Tyrod Taylor. This is just a lot of turnover and a lot of new players. Hugh Jackson is 1-31 as the Browns head coach. I feel like he needs to win a couple more games to keep his job.
I don't know why I ever said he was I liked him. Like he's.
It's gonna look.
Just charismatic.
I don't know that they're gonna I don't know what it's gonna look like in terms of fantasy output, or that they're even gonna, their standings. They're going to be particularly better in terms of wins and losses. But it's going to be at the very least more interesting.
For sure.
And having all these players in the mix who are pretty talented. I mean, some of these guys are pretty good, and they did well other places. I mean, I'm interested to see, because in the exact right situation, regardless of who's playing quarterback, you could see a situation where like, and look,
They overachieve. I mean, their defense was decent. Their defense wasn't that bad.
I realize what I'm about to say might sound kind of ridiculous, and a couple of
Fired up
people in particular who might listen will scoff or just be completely insulted. But their situation, in terms of the skill players they have, is not terribly, terribly different from like the Eagles 2 years ago to me, where like you don't have these like bona fide 1A stars, but you've got like a group of running backs and you've got a group of receivers with maybe, and they all do very, like Josh Gordon and Jarvis Landry are completely different players.
Yeah.
Corey Coleman is a completely different player from that. And Duke Johnson and Chubb and Carlos Hyde are all, I think pretty different, and they'll be used differently. And if they can get, the most important part of the equation, as always, is like, do they have, how good is Baker Mayfield going to be as good as advertised? Is he going to live up to the kind of hype and the number one pick and the billing that he has been sort of, offered, presented with, whatever verb you want to use, so far in the draft and in the mini camp stage? Sorry, I can't talk. We've got an hour here, so a little mealy mouthed.
Mealy mouth.
All that Morrissey singing. No, but it's just that is the question. But like,
interesting.
I don't think Baker Mayfield is Carson Wentz. I don't think he is. But they have pieces there where it's like, and this is just something I feel like when everyone has been like LOL Browns for 20 years, this is just something that is so rarely they've been able to say, which is they have like this talent.
They have a lot of talent
now, where it's like if you can get the quarterback who can like just not throw up all over themselves, be like they can be reasonably competent. And I think there's a lot of years where you've gone in and looked at the Browns roster and like there was no chance that was going to be the case, because you look at their depth chart and it's like nobody is going to produce here.
Yeah, no, I think there is definitely a lot of potential there. I think one of the issues is Tyrod has not displayed the ability to really get his receivers involved that much. He's kind of like, he loved Charles Clay in Buffalo, and there's always issues with Kelvin Benjamin. They overlapped, right, when they were in Buffalo? Kelvin Benjamin?
They did, yeah.
Yeah, they overlapped, and like he just had trouble getting him the ball, and I think they will probably.
But let me take the other side there.
Sure. They had shitty receivers too in Buffalo.
I was going to say, like, did Tyrod Taylor ever have Jarvis Landry or anyone close to that as operating out of the slot?
No,
like
it's a good point, and he likes the short passes, so like he could be.
He does.
I think Jarvis Landry is a very interesting target.
Jarvis Landry and Duke Johnson, both, I think, could benefit from exactly what you're talking about. And
it's a good point.
I think you're exactly right. I think like Tyrod is that he was just so risk averse when he played with the Bills, and it wasn't even that he like would throw the ball down the field poorly. It was like he would not throw the ball down the field at all. Like he would no risk. And that is the kind of thing where if anyone stands to if that's going to be to anyone's detriment, and if anyone stands to suffer from that, it would be Gordon, I would think, because Gordon is going to be in the role of Kelvin Benjamin if you're trying to kind of compare. But I mean.
But remember that year that wasn't it Brandon Whedon who was throwing him the ball where he like had that huge year? So
probably, yeah.
So it's like
that sounds right.
I don't know.
There are more like at this point there have been enough Browns quarterbacks in the last 2 decades to field like they could have sent a full 23-man roster to the World Cup in Russia this summer. And it's just been a disaster. But like the flip side, and then there's another part of that equation where it's like, when we're speaking from a fantasy perspective, do they have too many weapons? Like Jarvis Landry, in part, is able to get 90 or 100 catches in Miami because he's like the guy. And Devontae Parker can't stay healthy, and Kenny Stills has these flashes, but he's kind of inconsistent. And they trade Jay Ajayi in the middle of the year, and yeah, Kenyon Drake emerges and is good, but like when Cutler was throwing the ball last year, he just relied on Landry a lot, and you had this really strange line of 100 catches, 101 catches for, I think he had under 1,000 yards. Didn't he have like 980?
He had 987 yards on 112 catches. That's outrageous.
Which is crazy. But and so now
his by the way, his reception numbers are just out of this world. He has 400 catches already in four seasons.
Yeah. Now I have yet to ask you a direct question because I'm a rambling idiot.
No,
but if I
you're
can
not.
ask you a direct question, what do you think would be the? It's not fair to ask you how many catches he's going to have this year. If you're a Vegas odds maker and you want to set the line, the over/under line, to try and draw action on both sides, right?
Yeah.
What would you put the number at for Jarvis Landry receptions with the Browns in 2018?
I'm going to say 80. I'll set it at 80 because I think that's going to draw a lot of people.
I think that's fair. 80 and a half, 79 and a half, whatever it is. Yeah. Yeah,
because I want him, and I might take the over on that, but like you just laid it out, like all these people, like Duke Johnson, Josh Gordon, Corey Coleman, there are a lot of mouths to feed. It's just funny talking about this Browns offense. I mean, it could very well be a surprise us and be a really, really good serviceable offense. But it's just I'm kind of like smiling, like talking about like look at all the talent, look at all the mouths they have to feed. It's like, you know what? They're lucky to get the scraps. I mean, it's the Browns. Like we'll see. Maybe Jarvis will dominate again. I mean, he's had no less than 84 catches in his 4 seasons. So he could dominate. He could get a lot of some short little dink and dunk type catches. I'm excited for him though. I got my eye on him for sure. He's like their big off-season acquisition, so they're going to be using him a lot. But Sam, to close out this pod, I have some random things to ask you, just really fast.
Yeah.
I find myself getting enamored with Kirk Cousins. Yeah, I know that's the sign. That's like pretty much a telltale sign that I'm going to finish last in our league. When I say something like that, but how many rushing touchdowns do you think he had last year? Don't look it up, just off the top of your head.
Yeah. See, the way you're framing this makes me think it's high, so I'm going to say 6.
Oh, you bastard! It's 4. So
4.
You went over, but that seems like a lot for Kirk, no?
No, it does. I agree.
And how many did he have the previous year? Do you think?
I'll say 5.
He had 4 again, and the year before that he had 5. He's had 5, 4, and 4 rushing touchdowns the last 3 years. The man can kind of scamper around a little bit. He's had no less than 25 passing touchdowns his last 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
He's had no less than 4,093 passing yards the last 3 years.
Yep.
And he's going to a place with 2. I mean, hold on. Wouldn't you say, where would you rank the receiving core? I mean, it's got to be in the top 5. Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen. I feel like that's like 2 of the best, and they're going to be indoors 8 games a year. I just feel like he landed in a really nice spot. I mean, even Dirty Sam Bradford with his amazing completion percentage, but frail body and lackluster stats all the way around. He put up great numbers.
Very big eyes and a very focused stare.
Big eyes. So that he can see the field. That's why they're so big. He takes in the whole field with those eyes, and that's why he's so accurate.
So he can see the field when he's not playing. I'm sorry, Sam Bradford. I'm sorry.
But no, you have to concede that their receiving core is excellent. It's young, up and coming, explosive. both those guys can go
They were-
long. They can go through the middle.
Yeah,
They can do slants.
for
They can
sure.
do. I mean, that receiving core. I mean, if you had Stefan Diggs and Adam Thielen, and you started them
Yep.
every week last year, I mean, you would have had great production.
Yeah, well, and especially Thielen. I mean, I think Thielen is another
Thielen.
guy where it's like where you have to draft him this year.
Yeah, he's
He's
overvalued.
He's going to have to replicate or be close to what he was. And I'm not saying he can. He certainly could. You know,
Don't forget Rudolph. Rudolph the red-nosed galoot.
Rudolph is a decent back end, low end T1, I think, who
Touchdown
who could be
magnet.
solid. Like
Yeah.
it's hard to think that Cousins would be. He could at least be as good as Case Keenum, and I think Case Keenum was good. I think I mean, I don't think he was underrated because I think by the end of the year he was properly given the credit that he deserved, and he did a really good job, sort of out of nowhere, honestly,
Yeah.
given his previous stops in the league. I think Case Keenum did a really good job at like just, you know, I mean, it's a cliche to say game manager, but he just wouldn't
Made some
fuck up,
plays too
right?
every now and then. Yeah.
He like the big thing is they had that awesome defense, and Case Keenum would not have these crippling turnovers, and the rest of it, the receivers were good enough, and they managed to give the ball to Murray at the right times and give the ball to McKinnon at the right times, and it got him all the way to the NFC title game.
Yeah. I mean, he's like, the way I look at Case Keenum is he's like a homeless man's Aaron Rodgers. Like he runs around like a chicken with his head cut off, and he can make plays like similar to Aaron Rodgers. He can also, you know, turn the ball over and do really bad things for his team. And I'm happy he got that contract because you don't normally see like a journeyman backup, you know, a la Kurt Warner, suddenly become like a starter and perform well. So I'm happy for him.
Right.
But I do think Cousins is an upgrade.
I think he is too, and I don't think it's crazy to be enamored with him from a fantasy standpoint. I would say that how would I phrase this? I think he has a higher ceiling than Case Keenum, but I also think he's going to take risks that Case Keenum wouldn't have taken because he thinks he's better and because he is better.
Yeah.
And that actually might, you know, in some instances be detrimental. And of course, you're also, I mean, he's going to have. I mean, the Vikings were 13-3, so like, there's really, it's a lofty standard to recreate and to live up to, and he's going to have to do that because even 10-5, 10-6, 11-5, you're talking about a few games worse than last year. But yeah, I mean, Cousins is one of those where it's like, and you know, I'm sure if we went back year by year and really looked through it, Simmons, we could maybe find a situation. But I really can't remember a year where you just had so many storylines in the league that revolved around a team's quarterback.
Yeah.
And both through the draft and through free agency, where it's like you go division by division, and it's like, okay, Alex Smith goes to the Redskins. Now Kansas City, it's the Patrick Mahomes era officially, right?
Yeah.
Case Keenum is a Bronco. The Raiders have the same quarterback, but they have John Gruden who to like come in and like, you know, he's had these quotes, by the way, John Gruden, he's like, well, I'm set in my ways, and it's just going to be like 1998 when I come in. And it's just like, okay, cool, man. I guess that'll work. Maybe. Good luck. But you got that.
Doesn't have
Raiders.
Tim Brown and Jerry Rice out wide.
Right, exactly.
Or Charlie Garner in the backfield.
Like
or Rich Gannon.
It's like someone coming into like a fucking newsroom full of like iPads and like MacBook Airs, and he just like throws down a clunky Gateway 2000. He's like, "This is how we're doing this. This is my room now." Right? And
he's getting paid so fucking much.
You can see a scenario where the Raiders go 4-12, and it looks like, I mean, John Gruden literally, I mean, he is from a different era, and you think about how much the NFL has changed since 2008.
Yeah.
And like that's the last time he coached.
Yeah.
He's going to be
set
in
in
his ways. I think that is not good for Oakland / soon to be Las Vegas. right? But to continue,
Can't believe they're going to
Luck,
Las Vegas.
yeah, no,
Crazy.
it's a bummer. Luck is coming back from his shoulder issue. That's a huge unknown, right? You have the
Excited
Brown
for him, though.
situation already alluded to.
Yeah.
You have Joe Flacco, who's going to suddenly start to maybe get heat from Lamar Jackson. You have Sam Darnold on the Jets. You have a new rookie in a first rounder for the Bills with Josh Allen. You have Ryan Tannehill returning from a season-ending camp injury.
Deshaun Watson coming back from that injury he
you have
had.
Deshaun Watson coming back. You have Wentz coming back from an injury. You have Alex Smith, as we mentioned, on the Redskins.
Kirk Cousins
Kirk
in Minnesota.
Yep. You have
Jimmy Garoppolo. Can he reproduce the
Garoppolo.
success at the end of last year? Can he do it?
Exactly. And you have Sam Bradford sort of serving as a fill-in until the Josh Rosen era starts. And I really cannot remember. I cannot recall a year where quarterback there was this much turnover and this much uncertainty and this many intriguing storylines with so many teams, both from a regular and from a fantasy perspective.
Yeah, no, it's going to be exciting. There's a lot to take in, And speaking of which, with Kirk Cousins and Garoppolo, the Niners visit the Vikings week 1, and I think that's a loss for the Niners. I'm not excited about that game. I think I'm a little concerned.
Jimmy G's first career loss.
Yeah, I think because they're going to Minnesota, the place is going to be hopping, And one more thing on Kirk Cousins, and then I'll stop. I just want to ask you something. His career high passing yardage, 4,900 yards, 4,917 yards. Would you put him over or under that this year, just in your estimation?
Ooh, good question. You know what? I think he's going to have a perfectly good year, but I would probably put him under.
Put him under,
That's not really a criticism. I just think if Dalvin Cook is healthy, he's going to get the ball, and they're gonna have a kind of a balanced attack. I mean, I would expect there to be maybe a slight downtick in some of the receiving numbers. So I think Cousins is going to have a perfectly fine year, but I would probably take under on 4,900 yards.
Yeah, well, that was by far his most. I mean, I think the next highest looks like was 4,166. So it's probably a good bet. But
it's a good team, man. He's in a good situation to succeed. And honestly, the one thing that would scare me if I were a Vikings fan is that for all of his faults as a general manager and all of his stubbornness, John Elway did not have any interest in signing Kirk Cousins to a huge deal. And John Elway might not be a great general manager, but he's a pretty good evaluator of quarterbacks.
But why did he give money to Case? Well, he didn't give a ton of money to Case Keenum, but he seemed excited about Case Keenum.
He didn't give $30 million a year to Case Keenum.
Yeah.
Which is what Kirk Cousins is getting. He's getting a 3-year, $90 million deal.
Kirk Cousins has made so much money because of the franchise tagging.
He's been
rolling in it.
He's filthy fucking rich. It's true. But John Elway did strike out. I guess you could say on Paxton Lynch. But anyone who's already played in the NFL, he saw Brock Osweiler even after Peyton Manning's head fell off or whatever when he retired. He saw Brock Osweiler and he said no thanks. Right? And then the Texans gave Brock Osweiler $70 million. So to me, as much as I've talked up how I think Cousins will be perfectly fine, I'm looking at the contract right now. I think that the fact that Elway had the room to sign him, and actually, you know what, Ben, you're right. Keenum's salary will go up a lot in 2019. This year, it's essentially he signed for I guess it looks like his cap hit is $15 million, right? But his base salary is $8 million. Now that goes up in the second. And of course, now we're getting into dry cap, cap details, which only people like certain listeners that whose names rhyme with hemp are particularly interested in for our purposes. But like Kirk Cousins' base salary, by contrast, is $22.5 million, and then it goes up to $27.5 million, and then it goes up to because it's $29.5 million. So the whole term, Cousins signed a 3-year deal for $84 million, and Keenum signed a 2-year deal for $36 million. So it's $18 million a year versus $28 million a year. Yeah. And to me, and the Broncos have one. It's one less year, right?
Yeah.
To me, that would be the only thing. I'd be a little concerned because, like, the Broncos are another team where it's like for several years now they've had some talent, and like they're not as good as they were in their Super Bowl year, but they're not bad, and like they've missed the playoffs the last couple of years because their quarterback play has been so bad. Yeah. So, just thinking about all of that sort of in conjunction with one another, I think that it was a little weird that John Elway didn't jump at the chance to get someone who might have seemingly been an upgrade for the offense in Denver.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, we'll see, my friend. It's going to be.
But maybe John Elway's wrong. John Elway has been wrong before, and he might be wrong on this.
Well, it looks like he might be wrong on Paxton Lynch, but
I think he's definitely wrong on Paxton Lynch.
And did he draft Brock Osweiler, or was he inherited him? I can't remember. Because although he did play decently for the Broncos, he's been kind of a disaster elsewhere.
Elway became the GM and executive vice president in 2011.
Was little Brocky?
Osweiler was 2012. So here's the distinction we have to make then. Elway is not always a very good evaluator of talent, but he has been really good at knowing when not to pay a guy.
It's true. No, it's true. He did not want to pay Osweiler, and he really kind of tricked the other teams to pay him. He tricked everybody thinking that he was good.
Yeah, and by other teams you mean the Texans.
Yeah, but even like some national personnel like Bill Simmons, for instance, loved Brock Osweiler at the time. Now he makes fun of him and acts like he never liked him. But at the time he was fawning over him, calling him handsome and all sorts of other things.
I don't like that guy. He's too tall.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how he sounded. The way his voice sounds when he talks. But
you know what? It worked out for the Texans because if you're going to have a signing like that, you need it to be catastrophic instead of merely mediocre. It's the same philosophy as the NBA, where you don't want to be the team that keeps 38 and 44.
Yeah,
right?
it's like when David Robinson got hurt and they could draft Tim Duncan because they were so bad.
And I know the last few years have been painful for you as a Suns fan, but you would prefer that. You would prefer them just completely bottoming out and accumulating talent instead of just like treading water. And Brock Osweiler was so bad that he just became apparent after only 1 year of this massive deal.
Yeah.
He was not good. And who did that give? Who did that give the Texans?
Deshaun Watson. Yeah. Well, here's what I'd prefer. We're talking about what I prefer. I prefer if they drafted Luka Doncic instead of DeAndre Ayton, because I know it was funny, like, just observing you and the guy whose name rhymes with hemp. You guys go back and forth on WhatsApp, just debating. But I really am smitten by Luka Doncic. I'm a little concerned